On the morning of January 10th, 2019, in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in San Antonio, Texas, a man walks up to his own front door and finds something he will spend the rest of his life trying to explain. Inside, on the second floor of a nearly $1 million home, lie three bodies: a mother and her two young daughters, one of them just 10 years old, the other 16. The official story will tell you this was a murder-suicide. A mother who killed her own children before turning the gun on herself. But the mother's friends, her family, and even the sheriff leading the investigation will spend the next several years refusing to accept that story. Phone records will surface showing desperate calls made in the final minutes of that night. A civil lawsuit will be filed. A search warrant will suggest investigators believe this might actually have been a triple murder. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why, more than 5 years later, this case is still open, still unsolved, and why the man who found the bodies has never been ruled out. This is the story of Nichol Olsen, Alexa Montez, and London Bribiescas. And what happened next will make you question everything the headlines told you. The house sat in Anaquah Springs Ranch, a gated, upscale subdivision on the far west side of San Antonio, the kind of neighborhood with manicured lawns and six-figure home values. It belonged to a man named Charles Wheeler, a business owner in his early 30s. Living with him were his girlfriend, 37-year-old hairstylist Nichol Olsen, and her two daughters from previous relationships, 16-year-old Alexa Montez and 10-year-old London Bribiescas. On the morning of January 10th, deputies from the Bexar County Sheriff's Office arrived at the home after a welfare check. What they found inside was described in official reports as devastating. All three, Nichol, Alexa, and London, were on the second floor of the house, and according to investigators, their bodies were already cold and rigid by the time deputies arrived. There was blood smeared across the floor and walls, and a small pool of blood in a bathroom doorway. Wheeler himself told deputies he was the one who found them. According to his statement, he had argued with Nichol the night before, left the house, and spent the night at a relative's home. When he returned the next morning and no one answered his calls, he says he went back inside and discovered all three dead. Deputies who arrived at the scene later reported finding Wheeler outside in the front yard, on the ground, crying. But here's the detail that would follow this case for years. According to the deputy's own account, no tears were actually visible. That single observation, written into an official report, is where the doubt begins. And it only grows from there. To understand why so many people refuse to accept the official version of events, you need to understand who Nichol Olsen actually was. Friends and family describe her as a devoted, hands-on mother, the kind of woman whose entire world revolved around her daughters. She worked as a hairstylist, and by all accounts, she was building a life she was proud of. Alexa, her eldest daughter, was 16. A young woman with her own circle of friends and, according to relatives, a bright future ahead of her. London, her youngest, was in the 5th grade and described by teachers and classmates as bubbly and endlessly creative. In one of the more gut-wrenching details of this case, London was scheduled to audition for a televised talent competition just one day after she was found dead. Nichol had also, reportedly, been quietly planning something for the future. In the weeks before her death, she had toured a nearby apartment complex. Records show an email from the leasing office to her, sent the very day she is believed to have died, asking how her apartment search was going and confirming that the 3-bedroom floor plan she liked was still available for her preferred move-in date. To her family, this detail matters enormously, because it doesn't sound like a woman planning to end her life, and her children's. It sounds like a woman planning to start a new one. So if Nichol wasn't suicidal, if she wasn't the killer investigators initially believed her to be, Then what really happened inside that house on January 9th? To answer that, we have to go back to the last hours before the three of them died. According to Charles Wheeler's own statement to investigators, he and Nichol got into an argument on the evening of January 9th. He says he left the house and spent the night elsewhere, at a relative's home. He claims that when he couldn't reach anyone by phone the next morning, he returned and found the bodies. That's the story as Wheeler told it. But phone records tell a more complicated version of that night. According to sources close to the investigation, Nichol's cell phone shows that just after 11 p.m., while Wheeler says he was already gone, she made 5 separate calls. The first went to Wheeler's mother, and it went unanswered. Then, within the span of about 2 minutes, 4 separate calls were placed to 911. 3 of those calls didn't fully connect, but 1 did. Investigators have confirmed that 1 call from Nichol's phone actually registered with the 911 system that night, and yet no one was ever dispatched to the house. When later asked directly why a connected 911 call from a home where 3 people would soon be found dead didn't result in a response, the sheriff overseeing the case admitted it was one of the questions he still didn't have an answer for. Think about that for a moment. A phone call, made in the final minutes of 3 people's lives, reached emergency services, and nothing happened. This is the detail that turns a tragic but explainable murder-suicide into something far more unsettling. Because if Nichol was about to take her own life and her daughter's lives, why would she be calling for help? And if she wasn't the one pulling the trigger, who was in that house with her? Despite these unanswered questions, the medical examiner's office moved forward with a ruling. Their conclusion: Alexa and London had been murdered. Nichol, however, was ruled to have taken her own life after killing her daughters, officially closing the case as a murder-suicide. For Nichol's friends and family, this ruling was unthinkable. People who knew her describe a woman who put her children above everything else in her life, who they say would never have hurt them under any circumstance. A GoFundMe campaign, titled Searching for the Truth, was launched by loved ones who refused to accept the murder-suicide narrative, raising tens of thousands of dollars to push for further investigation. And remarkably, the pushback didn't just come from grieving friends. It came from the man in charge of the entire investigation. Bexar County Sheriff Javier Salazar has gone on record saying he was not satisfied with the case as it stood. In his words, signing off on the medical examiner's final report would essentially mean stating, officially, that Nichol Olsen murdered her own 2 daughters, and he wasn't willing to do that without more answers. So instead of closing the case, Salazar sent it back to his investigators. Twice. This is almost unheard of in a case where a medical examiner has already issued a ruling. A sitting sheriff, publicly and repeatedly, refusing to accept the official cause of death for one of the victims in his own jurisdiction. Which raises the obvious question: if the man running the investigation doesn't believe the official story, then who does? As the years passed, more details emerged that only deepened the mystery. A search warrant obtained later in the investigation revealed that detectives were explicitly considering whether this was a triple murder, not a murder-suicide at all. That same warrant showed investigators wanted access to electronic evidence connected to the case: phones, devices, digital communications. Then came a detail that added an entirely new layer of tension to the case. Reporting revealed that in the hours before the deaths, one of the girls' fathers had exchanged text messages with Nichol, and that the paternity of one of the girls had reportedly become a point of contention. It's a detail that hints at relationship tensions extending well beyond the walls of that house. Tensions investigators would have needed to untangle to understand the full picture of that night. Retired federal agents, working through a non-profit called Project Absentis that helps families navigate stalled investigations, got involved on behalf of Nichole's family. One of their investigators, after conducting her own interviews, stated publicly that she personally did not believe Nichol was a murderer, while also acknowledging that questions still remained before anyone could say for certain what happened. Meanwhile, the sheriff's office brought in the FBI to assist, the first time, according to Sheriff Salazar himself, that his office had partnered with the FBI in this way. Despite that extra manpower and expertise, the case remained unresolved, and a new investigator, one who specializes in cold cases, was eventually assigned to take another look. Every new piece of information seemed to raise more questions than it answered. And still, at the center of it all, sat one central, unavoidable fact. The only person confirmed to have been at that house that night, other than the 3 victims, was Charles Wheeler, and he had never been fully cleared. As the criminal investigation dragged on without resolution, Nichole's and London's families turned to civil court. London's father filed a lawsuit against Charles Wheeler, arguing that Wheeler bore responsibility for the deaths. The lawsuit alleged that Wheeler kept a loaded handgun beside his bed, that he had taught Nichole how to use it, and that the couple had a history of intense arguments during which, according to the suit, Nichole displayed increasingly erratic behavior. The suit's core argument was that Wheeler left Nichole alone in the house that night, fully aware of how volatile things had become, and that his decision to walk away had catastrophic consequences. Wheeler, for his part, has never been named a formal suspect. Sheriff Salazar has been careful and consistent on this point, calling him only a person of interest, someone investigators want to keep talking to, not someone charged with a crime. Reports also indicate that Wheeler has cooperated with investigators throughout. But cooperation and innocence are not the same thing in the eyes of a family desperate for answers. And the timing of certain events in this case has only added to the suspicion. According to the family's attorney, the sheriff's office appeared to stall finalizing its report right around the time the statute of limitations for a civil suit was about to expire, a claim the family's legal team suggested was retaliation after they'd pushed publicly for the case to be closed. Adding one more chilling layer, reporting has confirmed that a separate person of interest connected to a different death investigation in Bexar County was later found dead in another Texas county, a detail that, while not directly tied to this case, shows just how tangled and unresolved the broader investigative picture around this community has remained. So where does that leave us? A house full of unanswered 911 calls. A sheriff who won't sign off on the official story. A lawsuit accusing the one surviving adult in the house of responsibility, without ever accusing him of pulling a trigger. And a family still waiting, years later, for someone to tell them what actually happened to Nichole, Alexa, and London. As of the most recent reporting on this case, more than 5 years after that January night, the criminal investigation into the deaths of Nichol Olsen, Alexa Montez, and London Bribiescas remains officially open. Sheriff Salazar has continued to say there are simply too many unanswered questions to close it. The case has been reassigned to a cold case specialist within his department. No criminal charges have ever been filed against anyone. The house itself was eventually sold, changing hands in the real estate market as if nothing had ever happened within its walls. A strange, quiet postscript to one of the most disturbing unresolved cases in San Antonio's recent history. And Charles Wheeler. To this day, he has never been arrested, never been charged, and never been publicly cleared either. He exists in that unsettling space investigators call a person of interest, a label that, for a case like this, can last a lifetime. 5 years. Dozens of unanswered 911 calls. A sheriff who refuses to close the book. A lawsuit that names a man without ever accusing him of murder. And a mother who, according to everyone who loved her, would never, under any circumstance, have harmed her own children. So what do you think really happened inside that house on January 9th, 2019? Was this really a mother pushed to the unthinkable? Or was there someone else in that house that night? Someone who has never been made to answer for it? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want to go deeper into cases like this one, the ones the headlines close the book on before the truth actually comes out, make sure you're subscribed, because we are not done digging.